With over 8,000 plus graduates, Galvanize and Hack Reactor are leading the industry in data science and software engineering education. In this series, we interview students in depth on their educational journey. This is Decode, my coding bootcamp story.
Welcome to Decode, my coding bootcamp story. Today, we are interviewing Ian Salmon, who graduated from our software engineering Immersive program. So, let's get started. Ian, could you tell me a little bit about your background before you started learning to code?
Sure. Well, before I started learning to code, I played the violin for 30 years. I went to undergraduate and graduate school for violin performance and education, and I taught for 9 years in Texas. I spent 5 years teaching in a public school and 4 years teaching in a private conservatory.
How did that experience as a violin teacher help while you were learning to code? I mean, do you think there's a correlation between learning to play violin and software engineering?
Well, the correlation is certainly strong, and there are numbers and statistics to back that up. And while I can't comment on it in the same way that a neurobiologist might regarding the synaptic movement in the brain, I do think that it comes down to a few character traits, strengths, and virtues. And the first of those being a love of learning. And with a love of learning comes an idea that mistakes are only negative if you do not learn anything from them. It's something that I would work with my students on routinely. And it's especially difficult when you're working with children as young as 3, 4, or 5 years old. But it's also prevalent in adults as well. Mistakes are just another part of our journey along the way of learning. But if that's the case, where do we find joy? I believe that leads into the idea of vision or goal setting, creating measurable, achievable goals for which you'll measure your progress along the way. In music, you often pick up a new piece and you approach it as a project which will last weeks or very often, most of the time, months. So if you only judge your progress by the finish line at the end, you're in for some very, very miserable practice room hours. You'll probably want to quit.
Yeah.
So how do we find joy in it then? Well, if I take an example from music and violin in particular, you might decide that there's a particularly difficult shift in the piece, dramatic movement up the fingerboard. And it might only be one note amongst thousands in the piece, but it is very difficult and you have to overcome it eventually. So maybe today what we're going to do is practice that shift slowly. And by the end of the day, I want to get 10, what I would call acceptance criteria, 10 keepers in a row. At the end of the day, if I've achieved that goal, do I know that it's fixed forever? Certainly not. But do I feel like I've taken a step forward in my progress? Absolutely. Keeping these clear, measurable goals allow us to continue waking up and continuing the pursuit of whatever that project may be. In software engineering, you're faced with new technologies and services on a regular basis. So you're constantly learning. You have to enjoy that experience. You're also going to have tons of blockers and things you just get stuck on each day.
Right.
How are you going to see them? Are they going to be viewed in a negative light? Are you going to feel like an imposter? Or are you just going to accept as part of the process of learning and you're still moving forward towards the goal?
Sure. So, talking more about that progression and that goal achievement, while you were learning to code on your own, what were your most successful learning strategies while you're going through that?
To be honest with you, so much changed when I entered the Hack Reactor Galvanize immersion. That's difficult to pinpoint exactly what was going well beforehand. But looking at it now as a professional and a graduate, there was a trap that I fell into,
right,
which I wish I could have avoided for sure. I believe that I decided that I was going to become a software developer because of two reasons, two big things. One was I had a great passion for software engineering. I had just been a hobbyist, but I was fascinated by the subject for honestly the better part of a decade. It rarely materialized into anything though. I really just tried to be able to keep up in discussion amongst my friends that were developers. But the other thing that really helped me decide I was going to become a software engineer was realizing that it was a merit-based profession, similar to music. While having a nicely padded resume doesn't hurt, at the end of the day, or walking into an interview room, you're going to be judged mostly by your ability to accomplish a task and how you do it. It's about doing. It's not about necessarily what you've done before or what school you went to. So even though I had a graduate degree, it was in a completely unrelated field, but I wasn't worried about that. So now when you start learning to become a software developer, I think it's a two-step process. And I think that the first step is taking an entry-level course, taking a basic fundamentals of JavaScript or fundamentals of Python in a very structured track. And at the end of that course, you'll have a fundamental understanding of iteration through concepts like loops. You'll know how functions work. You may even have some experience with classes and inheritance. But then what do? You just took a very structured track on your path towards being a developer. And this is where I see many people pivot and choose a new language or a new framework and take the same 101 class all over again. And it becomes an endless cycle where you develop a very padded resume, but of shallow skills. Instead, what you should do is you should go deeper. You should actually start doing. It is a merit-based profession. If this is one of the things that sets you at ease, then why are you spending so much time doing code-alongs? Start developing the logic part of your brain and refining your ability in a language. It doesn't matter what language. If you want my recommendation, go to a job search engine, type in your local zip code, and whatever language is in most demand, just pick that one. It's not wrong. And start doing daily code challenges. Sometimes they're called toy problems. To start developing the logic of being an engineer, while at the same time refining your fluency in the language. You need to become fluent, because after that, it's time to start building. And you don't want to worry about syntax or nuances in that language.
Right.
It's also time to go into some of the heavier concepts. You need to be brave and you need to be fearless about data structures and algorithms. You have to take those courses, and they also require fluency. So spend less time deciding what language you're going to work with and more time building. Create projects. Be fearless in the face of algorithms, and that will help you be more successful.
Fearless in the face of algorithms is a great little quote there. I love that. So, talking through the fundamentals, obviously after that, it's time to really dive deep into something. So, for yourself, what inspired you to go to a regimented coding bootcamp like Hack Reactor?
What inspired me to go to a regimented bootcamp like Hack Reactor? To be honest, I did not have a great opinion of bootcamps until I went to one. So when I decided that I was going to become a software developer and leave teaching, a career that I did enjoy, that I did love, and I still miss, I was not willing to just quit my job. I was in the middle of the school year. I also was not ready to just take my life savings and start supporting myself when I didn't have any vision for what this process would be like. So I approached it like a teacher who was going to then be the student of their own class. And I decided that there was a certain time at the end of August when my career as a teacher would be over. My last lessons would be finished in August. And in September 2018, I began my job search. Along that path there, I had designed a very careful curriculum, going through just as many forums and popular coding websites as possible to find the skills that I thought were in most demand and what was going to take to become a full stack developer. But from September through December of 2018, I participated in a very rigorous and very discouraging job hunt. While I was able to get to the final on-site interview, which is typically the end of a hiring process for a software engineer, I was unable to ever seal the deal. I didn't have any offers. And come December, my vision for the future that I had so carefully laid out had become very, very cloudy. I woke up in the morning and could not decide how much time I should spend each day applying for new jobs and how much time I should spend furthering my education with the coursework that I was enrolled in.
Right.
And that became difficult because I was not getting any feedback from the prospective employers. No one ever said to me, hey, we brought you this far because you had all these. You didn't get the job because you were missing this. I never got anything like that. So I didn't even know if what I was studying was going to help me get a job.
Yeah.
I had lost my vision completely. And it was a very, very terrible feeling, and it was discouraging. Then I discovered that Galvanize had acquired Hack Reactor, and I discovered that through an advertisement that was announcing their first class in Denver in February of 2019. And I had heard of Hack Reactor before, but I didn't know they were tied with Galvanize. But again, I still at that time wasn't all about boot camps. But I was feeling so lost at the time that it only took a little bit of research for me to realize that not all coding boot camps were the same. And one of my fears about attending a boot camp was that they would not value the time and resources, financial as well as just time of my life that I had already spent pursuing this career, to just all of a sudden start at Hello World all over again.
Right.
I had done Hello World and many chapters well beyond that. I didn't have a job yet. I accepted I was not the best. I certainly was not, and I knew that. But I didn't want to start at Hello World.
Yeah.
So I saw that Hack Reactor did not start at Hello World, and that this was a curriculum that was going to value everything that I had already put into this developer inside me that just was a little lost at the time. When I got my acceptance into Hack Reactor, my vision came back, because I was able to say, at the time, I believe it was 95% of graduates at the time had a job within 3 months. And the median salary for those graduates was quite higher than what I had been asking for in the 3 months up to that point of job hunting. And the course was going to start in February, end at the end of May. And I was able to piece together a vision for myself again, one that was backed up not just by people talking on forums, but backed up by a boot camp with really the best reputation in the entire industry. So the vision coming back is really what helped me decide that this was going to be right for me. And I knew right away when I started the Immersive program, and I was able to focus for just a whole day without worrying about getting a job, I knew I was in the right place.
Getting to that moment, feeling like you're in the right place, what do you think the most impactful change was between that process of learning on your own versus learning at a boot camp?
What was the most impactful change from learning on my own versus learning at a boot camp? As I had progressed through several rounds of interviews prior to going to Hack Reactor, I had not received much feedback in terms of where I needed to improve. So I can't exactly say what specific point, if there was one point, helped me get a job. I can't say with absolute certainty that there was one thing or two things, but the greatest change that I experienced is very clear to me. And that is that I developed and implemented an engineering mindset. Before entering Hack Reactor, applicants are expected to be quite fluent in a language. At the time, it was JavaScript. Mm-hmm. So I knew how to write code, but I was a hacker. If given a task, I would sit down at my in Visual Studio Code in my text editor, and I would just start writing code. And it often led to misdirection. Very often, 2 hours down the line, I would realize that I hadn't properly thought this out. I would find ways to salvage what I had already written, or in a fit of rage, would just select all and delete. In Hack Reactor, though, it was structured in a way that we had to understand the benefits of whiteboarding your architecture, stubbing out your code, being able to verbally express through common speak, not machine language, through common speak, what it is you're trying to accomplish. Realizing that you should really think a problem all the way through logically before you start writing code. In the end, the code becomes the easiest part. The work is all the hard work is already done for you. The engineering mindset even plays a a great factor in your ability to get hired, and is a great predictor of your happiness and success in the professional world. So I'm very happy that I went from being a hacker to an engineer.
Just an amazing story. Obviously, you're just a wealth of knowledge. What advice do you have for somebody who's just starting to learn software engineering? What should they know to be successful?
There's one thing that I would certainly encourage all new software engineers to learn about. We have a term in the industry called being blocked. And it's just a different way of saying you're stuck. It's something that we need to be open about. It closes all of our daily stand-ups when I meet with my team every morning and I tell them what I did the day before and what I'm planning on doing that day. I always say, if I am blocked or not blocked, but you always mention it. Being blocked is going to happen. It's going to happen to you, and it happens to everyone. And it does not make you an imposter in the room. You will get through that blocker, but how you deal with being blocked is a great reflection and predictor on your happiness as an engineer and your reliability and experience on a team. If you're going to an immersive program, your teachers are going to talk about this with you. You're going to have to construct a methodology for being blocked. It starts with being honest with yourself and accepting and admitting, I'm blocked. Accepting that you don't know where you're going at this point. Now, how long do you time box it? How long do you continue grinding away before you ask for help from a teacher or before you ask a colleague? Or do you need to just think out loud, taking the popular rubber duck approach, where you literally describe what you're doing to an inanimate object? You would be amazed at how often I find the problems in a little rubber duck that sits on my desk. Do you need to take a walk and not think about the code at all? Or get a snack or work out? I wish I knew how many problems, how many blockers have been solved walking around the Galvanize campus in Denver, because I am certain that I could contribute at least a couple of dozen to that number. So how you deal with blockers is going to help your happiness and success going through a boot camp, but it's also going to help you get hired. You see, during the interview process, it's very common for employers to try to simulate the environment of being blocked with candidates. It may seem a little cruel at first, but when you realize what a great reflection it is on what kind of energy you will bring to a team and your happiness, and as a developer, having a clear methodology for going about being blocked will help you curb your frustration. So I would absolutely say, everyone gets blocked. Find out how you best deal with being blocked. You're not an imposter.
Ian, I think that's a perfect note to end on, and everybody gets blocked sometimes. I think that's a truth that we can all accept. And I just want to say thank you for joining us today, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. I think this is really, really helpful information, so just really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, and good luck to everyone out there.
Thanks for joining us. This has been Decode, my coding bootcamp story. If you would like to know more about our programs, please visit galvanize.com or email us at admissions@galvanize.com.